I'm Kevin Davis. This is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm happy to be joined today by Stephen Kokx of Kokx News. We've had Stephen on a few times, and well, as we've promoted him in the past, he is one of the few truth tellers left in the church and reporting on the church in Rome, reporting on Leo the 14th and what is going on with the conciliar church, etc. And he's really one of maybe a handful, maybe you can count them on one hand, who are actually trying to be intellectually honest. And he is not part of Trad Inc., which we might talk about a little bit today, and really providing very consistent material. And I just subscribed to him on Substack, and his email notifications are getting almost a little annoying. He's producing too much content at this time, so I may have to mute Steve.
Yeah, I know.
No, but it really is. It's fantastic stuff. He's a busy guy, and it really is something that is really just trying to shed light on, in a pretty difficult time, because as we're going to get into a little bit here, the first 100 days of Leo the 14th, it's an interesting papacy so far. I mean, I consider it not to be a papacy. I don't think he's the Pope, but I think it is a really fascinating. Oh boy, as I hear my son crying already. But it's interesting to see how he is so much different from Bergoglio, and yet very much the same. So before you guys do anything, make sure before the show is over, go over to his website, Kokx News. Is that Kokx News? Or I guess you're on Substack. Do you have a website, or is it just Substack?
Substack for now.
Substack for now. Okay, working on a website. Yeah, I'll attach that link here in the comments, and I'll make sure it's posted once this video goes published. And go over and support him. Make sure that you support the truth tellers. You guys can support us as well on Patreon. Go over to Patreon and just type in Catholic Family Podcast. We'd love your support as well. We're doing our best also to tell the truth in these difficult times. So Stephen, I'm going to run real quick. I got to run check on my son. If you want to just riff for 2 minutes, I'll be right back. And maybe tell the people what's going on in the first 100 days of Leo the 14th.
Yeah, sure. So, I think that's really important. I've said since the beginning that this is the Francis 2.0 regime, and what do we mean by that? We don't necessarily mean exactly that Prevost is an exact replica, right? He wasn't grown in the lab. He's not exactly the same temperament. He's not the same personality. He has slightly different views on various things and what he wants to emphasize, right? What we mean by that is he's going to continue the advanced or steroid-infused revolution that Bergoglio brought to the Vatican II revolution itself. And one of the hallmarks of that was the synodal process, as well as the continued and even hyper focus on environmentalism, and his, as we saw in the first early days of the administration, the appointment of women religious to various high-ranking posts in the Vatican. And so, whenever we sort of look at the situation, unlike the Trad Inc. community, I think you and I, Kevin, we recognize that, we are in a situation that's not unlike being in a prison camp. And, if we're in a prison camp and there's the prison guards, and then there's the highest ranking officer, let's say the highest ranking officer of the prison camp says, okay, let's say, Kevin, I was saying, imagine we're in a prison camp, right? And the guards are there, and the highest ranking officer is there, the commandant, if you will, and he allows us some more water, right? Or he gives us a nicer lunch, or maybe even lets us go outside, when it's nice and sunny out. Okay, we're still in the prison camp. All right, we're still in the prison camp, and in a similar way, again, as I said this before, after World War II, there were behind the Iron Curtain various communist states, right? The presidents and leaders of these various nations were just puppets, really, of the larger communist regime of the Soviet Union. And when each of these guys died or were succeeded, think of Russia as well, there was always someone waiting in the wings to take over, right? And so, to sort of, as I would say, get the hopes up of the mass of Catholics, as Trad Inc. and others did in the first days after the conclave, was an act of deception. I think was everybody willfully engaging in this? I don't think so. I don't think a call went out from Cardinal Burke to every single one of these influencers, and I never said anything about people being paid or compensated for going along with this. In fact, what you usually do in these sorts of movements, if you want to control a mass of individuals, is you just plant talking points and you maybe get one or two persons to maybe, be clued up on the deal. And the rest are basically just kind of useful idiots because what they already believe. They're all going to go along with, let's buy into the hope. He's got red vestments on. Let's promote that. Okay. But the fact again remains, just as my example with the camp prison guard, right? That we're still in the camp. We're still behind the Iron Curtain. These so-called new leaders that come on. What's the best they're going to do, Kevin? Even if you got Cardinal Burke in there, what's he going to do? Go back to Vatican II, the documents written by Yves Congar, Annibale Bugnini, the 62 liturgy, the nice Reverend Novus Ordo liturgy that they implemented later on. I mean, what's the best case scenario, even if you got the most conservative-minded clergyman, right? It's not a good situation. We're still not out of the camp. Now, again, some might say, well, we're on the way out. We're gonna fight the modernists with the conservatism and the reverent nice vestments, and we're going to overcome that. I don't think modernists are that stupid to allow a situation to arise where they're going to get kicked out as prison guards, right? They're not that foolish. They're going to continue to use everything at their disposal to keep tradition, real tradition, in the what do you call it? Isolated encampment area, right? Large picture, Kevin, I don't think it's prudent to get your hopes up and to be deceptive and to lead others into thinking that too, because that can lead us into thinking, to not having a grip on reality and to sort of spin off and to not understand the crisis for what it is. Again, I think there's a lot of similarities in this whole thing with the Babylonian captivity, which lasted 70 years. We're only 60 years past Vatican II. So, let's have a sense of reality here.
True. Yeah, it's a good point. And I think it's interesting when you look at some of the Trad Inc. I know one of them for sure. It's not him. He's going to be the same liberal nonsense as Bergoglio. He gets elected, and this same Trad Inc. guy is like, oh, my Pope, what a wonderful. It's like, wait, what? Come on. And it's just, I mean, do you think we didn't actually see your tweets? Do you think we're not watching? And that he wasn't the only one who did that. I mean, you mentioned in your article, I think, what's the guy's name? Damian Thompson, is that his name? And he's a guy I follow on Twitter. I think his name's something like that. And he was another one that was extremely critical of Bergoglio and extremely critical of the entire process. And then all of a sudden, it's Leo the 14th, and it's just like, hallelujah. It's just like, oh, this is exactly what I've always dreamed of. And it's like, okay, but why? Like what has changed exactly as you said? It's like, okay, this is the same system. I mean, he was good buddies. I mean, Prevost's brother just came out, I think, last week and saying like, yeah, this guy was real close and real tight with Bergoglio, with Francis. And if that's the case, then you mean to tell me that this very conservative, I mean, could he be that conservative? Could he be that, bring us that much hope if he was close friends, if he was really in tight with Bergoglio? No, I mean, I would say not.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is an attempt to curry favor, right? To say, oh, we're not those rad trads that were, blasting Pope Leo, right? Pope Francis, excuse me. We're going to play ball here. Thompson is a perfect example of that because, as Chris Jackson pointed out on his Substack, he was from the second Bergoglio walked out on the balcony there in 2013 was criticizing him, and I think made a good name for himself for the last 12 years doing the same thing. And so now what do we get? We have Cardinal Burke out there saying, oh, this is a Christocentric papacy. What the heck does that mean? I mean, does Christocentric mean, appointing women to the Vatican dicasteries? Does Christocentric mean canceling the Latin Mass in Detroit? Does Christocentric mean, as Leo just said in a message to an ecumenical meeting in Stockholm, we are dedicated to unity amongst all Christians? This is Vatican II, all over again. So again, there's moderate liberals, there's liberal liberals, there's radical liberals. They're all part of this liberal system, right? And so you might say Burke is a bit more moderate, if you will, but he's still part of the revolution, right? As they all are, as they all were. Ratzinger was too. So, I think we need to have a sense of proportion here and to keep our eye on the prize, which is Vatican II and the doctrine of the faith, not just these, as you said, the smells and bells and the aesthetics of it, right? Because as Bishop Sanborn, I think, just said in one of his recent videos, the reverence, the beauty, the aura, if you will, of the mass, of the traditional vestments and everything, that's the cloak of truth. That's what you put on that caps the beauty of the faith. But what's going on with Leo and others is that it's like a Halloween costume, right? You're just putting it on to look nice, but there's nothing under it, right? It's an empty shell. I think that's a great way to look at the situation we're in right now.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right, and I'm glad you bring up Vatican II. And to plug another show that I'm doing, I'll be recording with Louis Verrecchio again tomorrow, hopefully, and I'll publish on Thursday, looking into Lumen Gentium. And these are the important things because, exactly as you say, this is really the root of it. This is the root of where it goes back to. I mean, and heck, you could say it goes back to humanism or modernism, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, really what we're seeing now goes back to Vatican II, and this is where it's all stemming from. And as long as people don't understand that, then exactly as you said, then it's just going to be okay. If, let's just say, if Prevost, if Leo the 14th, if he says, okay, yeah, I'll allow Latin Mass everywhere, or SSPX, you can come fully into the fold, whatever it is, and he gives it, gives a cookie, he gives it some, gives the carrot rather than the stick, and people still don't understand that they're just gonna be happy with this one moment, this one win, when it's like, okay, yeah, but what about the actual doctrine? What about the actual teachings of the church? Well, if they're still believing in false ecumenism, in indifferentism, in all these different things that are directly contrary to the teachings of the church pre-Vatican II, as you say, what's the point? What are we doing? It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, true wisdom is in learning from the past. And what is not happening, it seems to me, is that most of traditionalists, if you will, I don't even call them traditionalists. I mean, to be a trad, you have to believe in the faith before Vatican II, right? And you have to see the rupture that Vatican II was. So Kennedy Hall's out here saying, "Oh, trads are being doomers and despairing because Leo's gotten in and he hasn't done what they want yet." It's just it sounds like John the 23rd. Condemning the rigid conservatives at Vatican II who just want to despair and gloom and be negative, so-called, right? That's how liberalism has even seeped into the sort of trad Inc. movement. Because again, we are not to be fooled, right? The faith allows us to see through a lot of the lies that are going on. And the Vatican hype machine has been using more explicitly outlets like EWTN and others to promote the notion that Leo is traditional. And if you go on my blog there, I wrote for the first 100 days of Leo, I gave 5 tweets from EWTN. They used the word traditional or tradition in each of them. And it was like the silliest things. It was Leo goes to live in Castel Gandolfo for the summer, reigniting a ancient tradition of the popes of the past. And then another one was when he put the pallium on the I think he just made some new cardinals or archbishops or something, and they said, "Oh, he revives this ancient tradition." It's like, okay, we get it. We want we know you want the world and the traditional movement to think this guy's traditional, but again, we see through those aesthetics and the meaninglessness of them. So we continue to have our head screwed on straight here, and to be aware of, as Lefebvre said in 74, that this is a Rome of neo-modernist and neo-Protestant tendencies. So, my question to all these hype men saying, oh, we got to give him a chance. We got to do these things. He's doing some good things here. Is the church still infiltrated or is it not? Are there still Masons in this institution? Are there still homosexuals running the show? I mean, show me the actions of Leo that have gotten any sort of attempt to root those out. I don't think there is any. So again, if you want to gaslight us, you want to lie to us about what's really going on and make money off that, and to think that's actually doing a good thing, which I do think some of these guys just really think, hey, we got to take a win when we get it. I mean, I'm not going to tell my viewers that. I'm going to tell them what's really going on, and to not fall for these these mirages that pop up, because I just think that's inspiring false hope, and it's to live a life not in reality, grounded in reality. So.
a comment from Commodus, who mentioned that, yeah, maybe it's better if we just don't focus on these things and focus more on just the beauty of the Catholicism and prayer life, etc. And yeah, of course, I think that's absolutely true, especially if you are already, aware of these things, then yeah, you probably don't need to watch this show. I think that's true. So this show is not directed at you, Commodus. So thank you for being here. I mean, it is more trying to get people aware, and this is what I'm sure Stephen's trying to do again. Trying to tell what is actually happening. And I mean, how many journalists in the world do we have doing that? I mean, let's not even talk about trying to tell what's going on in Rome with an honest view. And I think it's just an important thing to tell it. I think that's absolutely true. I think a lot of people should be off media completely, honestly, maybe myself included. So I mean, it absolutely, prayer life, etc. is of course it's more important than any of these discussions. That I think that goes without saying, but it is still important. And it's something like, again, the videos about Vatican II with Louis, these videos with Stephen about what is actually happening in the Vatican. That's important stuff, because as we said, Trad Inc. is not telling it as it is. And I mean, some of them are very purposely just avoiding it. They don't bring it up. They don't cover it. They don't talk about it. They avoid it, or they gaslight you. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't actually how it is. It was like, well, as Stephen says, it's actually changed. I mean, if Prevost comes out and says, the meeting of Bergoglio in Abu Dhabi was a horrible apostate move that should never have happened, and I reject it, etc., then I think Steve and I would both be sitting here like, oh, okay, that's hopeful. There's something there. There's been nothing like that, as you say. There's nothing even close.
Yeah, and I think too the one thing, because people will say, oh, you're just being negative, you're just focusing on critical things, you're obsessing over Francis. I mean, if people read the blog, this is like low level hanging fruit sort of stuff, right? Like Leo appointing multiple nuns to the Vatican dicastery for consecrated life. All right, he allowed a woman to give an address to the Roman Curia in Paul VI Hall. Right. I mean, if this was like 7 years ago, that's something like Rorate Chaley blog or a lot of these other guys would jump at, right, and do a podcast on and say, what is the role of women in the church? I mean, it's just basic sort of stuff to point out. And then secondly, like, why are there still homosexual blessings happening in the Vatican? Why is Casey Fernandez not outed and ousted from his post? No, again, I'm hearing rumors there might be some new appointments coming. Cardinal Burke allegedly is out here saying these sorts of things, and he just had a meeting with Leo himself. But I mean, in the meantime, while the church burns down, right, while again the Latin masses are being canceled in Detroit and elsewhere, while Weisenberger over there is instituting jazz masses. Okay, there's this. I just put a blog up on this today. There's a jazz mass happening this weekend. Now, apparently, it's a 9th annual one, so it's not something that he just did. But it's noteworthy to say, okay, what's going on here? We're not obsessing over these things, but this is like stuff that used to, under Francis, get all the attention in the world. And there would be podcasts, joint letters denouncing what was going on. And so it's like, hey, I'm saying the same. Okay, I've seen what all of these folks have seen last 12 years. Why aren't we continuing to do the same thing? I think that it's a betrayal of what's what our mission was, what it has been as lay journalists, and to remind the faithful of what's actually going on here. So that's the way I sort of see it. And I do agree with you, though. I mean, is everybody supposed to be focusing on this stuff? I don't think so. Lay people, if it disturbs you, or if you have, if you have family to raise, please don't be just obsessing over this stuff, because you have more important things to do. But yeah, for sure. I think people in this space have a duty to recognize it and call it out.
Was it? It may have been Damian Thompson lately on Twitter, on X, that was talking about papal minimalism, and it just made me think of this, because I wondered, because there was an event in Vienna, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, where I don't think it was at a service or a mass or anything, but it was at I think they just had some group of dancers or whatever. They had like they were dancing with these chickens, like these raw chicken that should be sticking in an oven, and it had like diapers on it and stuff. This is in a cathedral. I think it was in Vienna.
That's a new one.
Yeah,
chicken
bizarre. Yeah. I who knows what they're doing, but the idea is, I mean, so is this something that does Trad Inc., do the Pope splainers, do they just kind of mark this down to, well, it's got the approval of the bishop, and anyway, collegiality. The Pope's just kind of, he's kind of more symbolic than actually the head of the church. I mean, do you think is papal minimalism? Is that a thing in modern Catholicism?
Well, first of all, I've never heard of anything like that. As far as all the pre-Vatican II documents on the office of the papacy, what they say about the Pope is that no, there is no option here of papal minimalism, maximalism. Almost all these things that are just made up to justify, it seems to me, the recognizing his disposition, right? Oh, well, he's only infallible on those rare occasions every 70 years when he actually invokes his infallibility, right? I mean, when Pius XII was Pope, he said explicitly in his encyclical letters, they're not to be resisted and rejected. This is Gallicanism, as far as I can tell. And I know Mario Dirksen's written about this as well. So that seems to me to be the characterizing, the hallmark of the neo-trad, the trad Inc. perspective right now. Because, and so they've convinced themselves, Kevin, I think that, okay, we can just ignore all these other things for the sake of the situation at hand. And I mean, I just can't wait until the day comes when we actually do have a pope, have a traditionalist on the seat of St. Peter, and he's doing all these things, and then James Martin is going to say, "Well, I'm just a papal minimalist." I mean, he's reviving things that were condemned by Vatican II, and I'm going to keep doing what I want, and so they're laying the groundwork for a double standard here. And I do think I don't know if it was Thompson or not who was discussing this chicken mass, but as far as I can tell, these stories aren't getting traction because, again, they don't want to draw attention to the negativity stuff. They want to focus on optimism, hope, etc. I think it's a false optimism. I think it's a false hope, and I think it's just intentionally. This is a media tactic that's been done in the secular media too, right? I mean, they are not covering the situation in Gaza.
It's propaganda.
Right? The genocide taking place there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're not directly lying to you maybe about the situation, but they're not covering it. It's a deep silence. And so this is what's happening in the trad Inc. sphere, to try to just focus your attention away from all those negative little bad things, as they say, to the more optimistic things. And I think that's increasingly, though, I am seeing this starting to come to a boiling point. I have seen some voices on social media and their YouTube channels now saying, hey, look, our benefit of the doubt is starting to wane here. We need to see some real action. So if anything else, that's a positive thing. I do hope more people will come to see that. But again, I hate to say, we told you so over at Kokx News, but from the beginning, I know you did. You were there as well, Kevin. We had a podcast a day after the conclave.
Yeah.
And thank God, again, by the grace of God, go us, we were able to see right through this. And so I think that speaks volumes about where the situation is at right now.
Well, I want to share, and it's a good point, because I think you're right in tooting your horn a little bit here, because you really called it. This is on Kokx News. This is something you published 72 hours after the conclave. The revolution that was unleashed at Vatican II will continue to march on under Leo, but will be dressed in traditional garb and will come with a smile instead of the insults and jeers of Francis. And I think that is exactly right. I think that I could not have said that better. I think it's perfectly said. And I think it's an interesting thing, because they chose well. He is likable. I mean, he really is. I mean, like, if you just see him with the crowds, I mean, he's charismatic. He just has a pretty nice way about him. I mean, I haven't met him, but I mean, Bergoglio didn't. I mean, he just didn't. I mean, Bergoglio was very brash and rough, and he'd have his moments, but he was not a very likable guy. I think even if you're a fan of his, I think you'd have to admit that. But Prevost is, and I think that's a pretty sneaky plan, because again, I think we talked about this maybe before the show. Maybe I forget if we talked about it during the show. But yeah, he was buddies. He was buddies with Bergoglio, and I think that.
Well, he was his more specifically, he was his head of the bishop's dicastery, right? So he was appointing and helping appoint and give input on bishops like Weisenberger,
right?
Exactly. And what's going on in Raleigh, North Carolina. I think too, he probably had some input there. To the point about this is the synodal revolution, and it's it again is the Vatican II revolution just on steroids, right? But one of the reasons why I wrote that was because, again, on the balcony, he said, we want to be a synodal church. And more explicitly since then, he's said in May to university rectors who were engaging in a UN agenda for climate change. He said, you are engaging in a, quote, synodal work of discernment in preparation for this event. And then he said for a third time, the ordinary council of the General Secretariat of the Synod of Bishops, Pope Francis has given us a new impetus for the Synod of Bishops, and the legacy he has left us seems to be, above all, that synodality is a style, an attitude that helps us to be church. So again, he's bringing that forward. So the baton's been passed, and he's running that to the finish line. And the appointments that he's making, some of them have been very problematic. He's already made 68 appointments. Most people don't know that. They just know the one or two that he's made. That the Western media has focused on, one including a bishop down in Sydney, Australia, I think, somewhere in Australia, who is friendly to women ordinations. So, or women deacons, I think. So, it's not hard to put this together. And again, as you read in the blog, he's a supporter of environmentalism, immigrationism, open borders, Amoris Laetitia. So he's continuing all that. And that, of course, all stems from Vatican II. Okay?
And again, how important is it to compare Vatican II and pre-Vatican II? I mean, it's so shockingly different. I mean, anyone watching this, I can't recommend enough just to read the documents. I know I'm going to get in trouble because I haven't read all of the Vatican II documents. I'm sure Stephen saw that as well. But I mean, I've listened to sermons on them. I've read summaries of them, and I mean, if you just see what they're teaching, again, false ecumenism, indifferentism, etc., and then you just go back 50 years before. And the popes are clearly, even 20 years before, they're just saying, hey, nope, the Catholic Church is the one true faith. The unity of the church can only be if you join the Catholic Church, not, they're all good. They all can lead to heaven. And that's what I just don't really understand how, and I think it is, again, it's and how they seem to avoid this is they just like covering their eyes and just being like, I'm just going to kind of pretend it doesn't exist and try to live my faith, which is like, okay, yeah. But
well, I mean,
is it Catholic?
Yeah. To your point, I mean, so just like literally this week, a couple of days ago, Leo gave a message to participants in what's called Ecumenical Week. I've never heard of this. Maybe it's a new thing. Ecumenical Week 2025 in Stockholm. And Leo gave his words there. It was a group of Orthodox, I think, and other Swedish archbishops of the Lutheran Church there were present. And Leo gave a message. He said, Vatican II stood as a courageous sign of unity amidst differences, an early witness to the conviction that our shared confession can overcome division and foster communion. So nothing about how they are schismatics apart from the Catholic Church, but again, just reaffirming that Vatican II false theology that the Church of Christ involves, the Catholics, the Lutherans, the Baptists, etc., and others. So he's been driving this point home, and that's the most recent example of that. So, if you haven't read Vatican II, Unitatis Redens Gratio, I can't say it, but if you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So,
yeah, and again, if he was truly someone to be hopeful about and to bring the church to what it should be, wouldn't he get in and the next day he would get rid of all of these gay bishops and priests, and he would, I don't know, write something against Amoris Laetitia. I guess I don't know exactly how it works. So he would have to condemn the last popes, right? And as you said, if he doesn't, if he's still hand in hand with these last, I consider them apostates. I don't consider them to have been popes. That's, again, what's the point? I just don't know. I mean, it's just so kind of, I don't know if depressing is the word, but it's certainly not hopeful.
Yeah, the thought is, well, over time, maybe, okay, with these little victories, he's wearing the nice vestments that we're chanting Latin again. This is the mentality of a lot of the people like Eric Sammons, that maybe over time, people will come to see the reverence, etc. Well, I mean, we really kind of had that under Benedict, and, they weren't really friendly to trads ultimately, because they set up the extraordinary form of the Mass, right? So they diminish the traditional Latin the Mass, and they just say, oh, it's ordinary, extraordinary, right? It's one of both. It's the same thing. But again, then they set up institutions, right? Ecclesia Dei groups. They don't want you going all the way over, at least to the SSPX and others to the right of them, because they don't want you to go that far. So they'll give up an adult or here or there just to keep you in the zoo, if you will, right? We can talk about SSPX if you'd like to, but maybe Kevin, you can bring up on the screen here these two quotes from Prevost. He made in some tweets here. And my friends Catholic Esquire and Chris Jackson mentioned them in tweets. And here we'll read what Leo has to say first. He says, what is the true meaning of life? It's a big question mark, right? Obviously to know, love, and serve God. But here's what Leo says. We can What can free us from being trapped in meaningless boredom and mediocrity? The fullness of our existence does not depend on what we store up or what we possess. Rather, fullness has to do with what we joyfully welcome and share. I mean, that's the meaning of life? Really? I mean, come on, man. This is a social justice, like 8th grade high school sort of stuff, right? But talking points. And then down here below, here's again Leo saying something from the balcony. It is not about sharing material possessions, but about putting into play our abilities, our time, our affection, our presence, and empathy. Well, okay, that's nice. But as Chris Jackson here mentions, when's he going to talk about the belief required in Jesus Christ, penance, mortal sin, for last things, etc.? So this is, again, just carrying on the general blather of not just, again, Bergoglio, but his predecessors. I mean, it was John Paul II who just spoke in platitudes about who knows what for 30 some years, however long he was in office, right? So I mean, this is what we get with our Vatican II popes. They just want to make everything about a humanistic, feel-good religion, not doctrine, not the real stuff that makes the faith. Now, again, has Leo said some things about those things? Sure, right? The devil obviously scatters truth with error, and so it's not just all going to be on one side of the equation here, but that's the general attitude that this guy's giving out. And so, hey, what are we getting so excited about? I don't see it.
But you are pretty dumb and silly if you believe that Trading is trying to pull something over people. We'll play a little bit of this because I did that. It seems that he is directly talking to you, good sir. Or saying that Trading possibly exists. So of a little bit from Eric Sammons.
The stereotype, the general view of him could end up being he's another Francis. It kind of supports Francis, even through no fault of his own particularly. Maybe he could make it like that, but it might be just because they try to claim him. So we do have to resist that. I've seen this over and over on social media where the usual suspects will try to claim Leo as one of their own. You saw this like Cardinal Marx of Germany. He really is trying to do this. But that's not fair to Leo. Let him be his own man. Let him be who he's going to be. And so that's something I think we need to see, how some traditionalists have just gone crazy. I was going to use a term that shouldn't be used in a family podcast. We try to be a family podcast here. But they just go crazy attacking what they call trad ink. Whenever somebody uses an attack and they say ink afterwards, it probably is them being dumb. Conservative ink, Catholic ink, trad ink. I've used it myself, I'm sure. I was probably being dumb too. But the whole trad ink, that basically somehow, I don't know how this happened, some conspiracy happened among traditionalists. The Peter Kwasniewskis, the Taylor Marshalls, me, other people like that, where we all decided, whoever the Pope is at the Francis, we're going to back him. We're going to be for doing this.
So as you said, you don't accuse him of getting money from it, but I think it's he just doesn't. He doesn't really defend it. I think he just kind of says, "Yeah, if you believe that, you're dumb." It's like, well, I mean, I'm sorry, but explain to me how some of these guys truly said he would be a bad pope, and then he becomes pope, and he's like, "Oh, this is great." I mean.
Well, look, I mean, again, if it's true, and I have, I take what I'm hearing at
did they just value. Have a change of heart? I mean, what is that?
Yeah, so I think sorry on the lag there, Kevin. If it's the case that Burke has not, given a stand down order, okay, that's good to know. There's nothing like that happening. But if it did, at least it'd be excusable for what these guys are doing. So again, going silent on what otherwise was just generally like a Tuesday during the Francis regime, right? So just that the Leo was doing all these sorts of things that I've already mentioned. That was like, grand slam home run podcast material under Francis. Now, because at least he could say, well, I'm just obeying Cardinal Burke. But now that they're doing it willfully and saying, oh, well, we're just going to ignore all that. Well, okay, now we know exactly that you don't understand the crisis itself. You do think that the vestments and everything that's nice is being put on. It is just a Halloween costume. Again, you're not understanding that we're in a camp We are behind the Iron Curtain. We are being occupied by squatters in the Vatican who are just putting on a show to trick everybody into either being, a more moderate liberal, a more conservative liberal, a more liberal liberal. And until people realize that, just calling out these little wins, which they're not wins. Again, we're in the camp, right? We're in the isolated area. Until those gates are open, until we have a new commander in chief of the army, if you will, of this camp, we should not give up. And I think this is the prime example of the SSPX. And we can talk about that pilgrimage now if you want, Kevin. Because years ago, at least Lefebvre in the late 80s, I know again a lot of our listeners have issues with Lefebvre too, and again he wasn't perfect, but at least he would say, "Do not shake hands with these modernists. Do not allow yourself to be entered into this pluralistic system, to be put on display in this ecumenical zoo." And that seems to be exactly what Eric Sammons, Kennedy Hall, and all the other trad influencers want for tradition, for the SSPX and others, to just say, "Oh, let's give us some crumbs. Let us be in this conciliar pantheon. Let's be a side chapel in this zoo, and we'll be happy." And so that's, I think, the message that's not being mentioned here is that that's the real issue, and until that's solved, that's the nature of the crisis. And so let's keep focusing on that and not water down our message and take it to the enemy. Again, these are squatters. They're invalidly. They are usurping the roles of traditional Catholic bishops and priests. Okay, they are keeping us on the outs illegally. All right, that's a situation. It's a counter church. So if you were, if this was a church run by Protestants, would we say, "Oh, thank you, Protestant pastor, for giving us crumbs from the table"? No, it's the same thing. Modernism is a heresy. Protestantism is a heresy. These are usurpers. Okay, we have to see them as enemies. All right, and until otherwise, they're wolves in sheep clothing. Until proven otherwise.
Ooh, amen to that. Could not agree more. And I do want to. You brought up a little bit of the SSPX. I want to kind of talk about that here before we end. I also want to. I have a question here from Tube Maven. I don't know if you have a recommendation for this. What book do you recommend to learn about Vatican II academic quality? Someone help me in the chat. I mean, the Radecki fathers have one, and I cannot think of the name of it. And it's like that thick and definitely full of really, really good, really detailed information. Someone help me in the chat. I can't think of the name of it. It's not Tumultuous Times. It's the other one.
20 councils of Tumultuous Times is a good one though. I read that.
No. This thick, and I think it's covering just how the modern church came to be, kind of with the details of each character, and really interesting. Someone help me out here. I don't want to search it right now because my internet's already bad enough, which I'm gonna have to try to get.
Well, I'll say. I mean, I'm writing a book on the council. It's called "What Your Priest Isn't Telling You About Vatican II."
Oh, nice.
And what I've read about the council, what I've learned has come. I mean, there are some very good academic books on this. Roberto de Mattei, although he's more of a neo-trad, has written a fairly thick academic book just calling Vatican II. Michael Davies' book, I think, is always helpful, at least when it came to my understanding of religious liberty. And then Ralph Whitkin's book, "The Rhine Flows into the Tiber," was helpful. So I'm sort of synthesizing a lot of these books into my own, and obviously infusing a lot more stuff that I've learned over the last couple of years, especially on all these subjects that you and I are talking about. So I'd suggest maybe waiting for a few months and waiting for that. But I don't know what this is. Exposed as Counterfeit Catholicism. Who wrote that one?
That is from the Radecki fathers. So they're the same ones who wrote Tumultuous Times and a few other books. That's the one that is directly covering that topic. And as far I haven't read it, I'll be honest, kind of like the Vatican II documents, but I know that it covers things in very great detail.
Maybe you just don't know how to read, Kevin.
It may be, actually.
Are you illiterate?
The Vatican. And maybe there are probably people on Twitter who actually do believe that. That would not surprise me. Thank you for those in the comments who mentioned that. And I would like to get your opinion. And everyone, please remember again to go over to Substack. I'll attach that again here in the comment section and support Stephen over there. Support what he does. Support someone who's trying to tell the truth and tell it how it is. Yeah. What are your thoughts right now on the SSPX? Because I had a really interesting back and forth, just a brief back and forth with Anthony Stein on X, and he's usually one of the more calm voices on X.
Yeah.
And he said, so let me see. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. My internet is just shocking today, even more than normal. Anyway, I can't get my original tweet, but we're talking about the SSPX. And I said something about the SSPX being in communion with Rome. And he says they are in full communion. Partial communion is the language of the revolutionary forces in Rome that want to bury tradition. What are your thoughts for that? That seems, I don't know. Like, I don't really understand that response.
Well, it comes from a position of viewing the Vatican, the post-Vatican II church, as the actual Catholic Church, as opposed to a conciliar imposter ape institution, right? Because it says, the Vatican's pronouncements on this matter with SSPX relations are actually like truthful and honest, right? That you're out of communion with the actual Catholic Church. Those who understand the crisis for what it is will know that the true church is not in Rome. The conciliar church is an ape of the church, and it's an imposter eclipsing the real church. And so, what I wrote about this, I mean, does it really bother me to my core that the SSPX did a pilgrimage to Rome? I don't think so. I mean, Lefebvre did it in 75. The SSPX did it again in 2020, and then now 25 years later. I do think, though, it does lend itself to the optics that this is not a good thing, at least because, again, the conciliar church hasn't slowed down in its errors. It's only gotten worse. And so what is going on here? Why does SSPX, at least in a certain sense, seem to want to be getting back in bed with it? Why did they curry favor under Francis and seek, marriage approvals from local ordinaries? Why did they have their confessions approved by Francis? It's sort of like the kiss of death, right? Like, why are we seeking approval from heretics? If the Vatican is infiltrated and occupied and it's full of heretics, as even Lefebvre said many times, what are we doing dialoguing with it? If you go to my blog, I note that the SSPX used to talk in a way that said, do not have relations with them. Even Lefebvre himself said, dialogue of death. It's no use. We need to put the point of emphasis on doctrine, and we need to say that these are occupying powers. And so I think that a lot of the response to this pilgrimage comes from influencers and others. Again, a lot of Zoomers out there these days with podcasts just hyping this up as the best thing ever. I think they're using this argument, or they're saying, we're not in schism, et cetera. We are in communion with the church, to push back against those voices like Church Militant and others who for years said the SSPX, oh, you're in schism, et cetera, et cetera. And they're using this as a sign to say, see, look, we're actually okay with the Vatican. We don't have big major problems. But I think they're forgetting what the actual SSPX position of old, at least, right? Many years ago.
Right.
And again, Lefebvre changed his attitude over time, for sure. So I'm not discounting that. But as far as I can tell, his most mature thought on the matter after 88, when I do think he seemed to be getting a lot more graces on this matter, he said, this is a dialogue of death. This is the same situation as we found the liberal Catholics in the 1800s who said, we just want a free church in a free state. Well, I think if you update that, what these influencers are actually saying is that we want a free SSPX and a free conciliar church. We want just to have the rights of tradition respected. We just want to be free to go about. But the problem is, the SSPX has denounced every community since the early 1990s that went and made a deal with Rome, starting with Dom Girard and Les Barreaux in France, going on then to the Institute of the Good Shepherd, I think, made a deal in 1997 or so. And then Diocese of Campos, FSSP, and down on the line. And every time they came out and said, this is, you're making a deal, you're compromising on the faith, you're entering into the pluralistic structure. The Vatican is not recognizing tradition in any real sense. They want to put you in the ecumenical zoo. So, again, I think that's the short end of it. Go to the blog and read more if you're interested. That's the, I think, correct position for the SSPX that at least they should have been taking. And that, to me, is the real zeal, the counter-revolutionary spirit that all traditionalists really should have, and say, hey, look, this is an imposter institution. Why are we seeking reconciliation with it? And the SSPX along the way to justify their efforts to get approval. And they might, again, get approval for new bishops, or just seek out approval from, or help rather, from Novus Ordo clergy. They've had to twist this recognize and resist position because in the past they were much more open to say we are out of communion with this apostate institution. Now they've drilled down and dug in their heels that this is the Pope, this is the church. So, they're in a very difficult spot going forward with the bishop situation there, and what they're doing with welcoming in non-traditional ordained clergy. I mean, Kennedy Hall, again, a man who I know for years and been to his house, not a bad person at all. I just think he's kind of confused on this, and I would love to have a conversation. He was saying at one point not long ago, like, what if Bishop Strickland or Bishop Schneider ordain their candidates? I mean, come on, like, is that Lefebvre?
What's the point?
Serious doubts about the Novus Ordo consecrations and everything. So it's just very bizarre where things are going, and that people aren't seeing it. But again, that's the nature of the crisis. They just a lot of people don't know these things. They're too young. They've not studied them. They just know what Bishop Fillet has said. And Bishop Fillet has always said, hey, let's get a personal prelature. It's a matter of justice that the conciliar church owes us. So what about the justice that these putative popes owe to God to be traditionalists and to allow tradition to flourish in the entire church, right? What about the rights of God to his church, to a non-modernist pope, if that's even possible, right? To a non-modernist occupying the see. That's what I think of. Not so much, give us the rights give us the right to be free. That's liberalism, right? Well, let's just give us some crumbs, please. Give us a free traditional church, free traditional movement in a modernist church. Is that what we really want? It's not going to work because it hasn't worked. So,
well, and exactly, you say though, it doesn't make sense. How can they be in full communion? They're not, like literally, right? They're actually not, like they're not actually given. They don't have the full ability to perform their priestly duties in communion with Rome. So Anthony Stein is wrong. Here's the original tweet. So he says Sedevacantism is okay. Actually, Novus Ordo Watch says some people think Sedevacantism has fizzled out. Anthony Stein responds, Sedevacantism is still here. It's R&R that's fizzling out. I said pretty much that's interesting, and he says, and I said that's an interesting observation. Do you think SSPX will go full union with Rome? He says they are in full communion. No, they're not. They're not. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, what does that mean? I mean, how could they be in full communion when they're literally?
Yeah,
not,
I think what
right?
they're saying is, again, like they're in a symbolic sense, or like they're within the church in a figurative sense, if you will, right? So they have the faith, they have the traditional, mass, etc. So in a sense, they're in it. But no, you're right. I mean, all they have at the moment is their marriages are given over to local ordinaries, and their confessions were approved by Bergoglio, I think 2016, and that's continued indefinitely. And I think that's the extent of any, like, from a conciliar perspective. I mean, the conciliar church, I don't think can say they're in communion with us, because I mean, you still get bishops who condemn them and say no, don't have anything to do with them. So, but I don't think canonically, from a Vatican II 83 Code of Canon Law conciliar church perspective, they are necessarily in communion, and partial communion doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
But I mean, even if you're saying, or how if you feel like, I feel like I'm in communion because we're doing what the church said, but you're actually not, because you're saying, hey, this is the Pope, this is the church, but we don't really obey, we don't really care, because we're literally outside of communion with them, because Rome does not accept us fully, but I feel like it because he is the Pope, even though I don't accept him as Pope. It's the whole SSPX, this is their entire position in a nutshell, that it doesn't make sense. What are we talking about here? I mean, we are in full communion, even though you can't possibly. I found it really a bizarre tweet, and then he blocked anyone who argued with him on Twitter.
Oh no! Come on, Anthony. I've always liked his stuff. But I mean, like the one thing Bishop Sambor would always say is, like, for Jane to be with Johnny has to be with Jane. So it's a two-way street, right? So SSPX likes to say, oh, we're with the Vatican. We use the Pope's name in the canon. But I mean, again, it's not the opposite, So so I don't see it either. I mean, it's very bizarre. Maybe there's things behind the scenes that we don't know. There's secret or discreet deals. Okay, SSPX. Imagine I'm a Novus Ordo bishop. Yeah, you can operate. I won't condemn you. And then they say in return, well, okay, we won't condemn you either. But that's not public. We don't know that explicitly. So we can just see. We do see the fact that its superiors are not condemning and not rebuking the way they used to, right? And one of their loudest voices, Bishop Williamson, who's the latest comments I'm reprinting on my blog, he was kicked out. And Bishop Vigano is crying out, and they don't have good relations with him. So it's like they're just going silent. They're trying to be FSSP 2.0 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before with Lefebvre, I have a huge respect for him. I think, as you said, I don't know if he did everything correctly, or if I was in his shoes now. I mean, playing Monday morning quarterback is super easy. I mean, it's so easy to be like, well, why didn't he do this? So, like, shoot, I mean, he was. I'm sure he was good friends with these men who he couldn't even imagine that the entire structure of the church could fail. I mean, imagine his position. I think people in his shoes, and again, yeah. I wish he had gone all the way and said, hey, this is not the church. He's, as you said, he certainly would say, if he was alive right now, there's no way he would be doing, no chance. I mean, no chance that he would be buying into what they're selling in Rome. I mean, no way.
Yeah, I think I put this out on Twitter just the other day, because, again, the reaction that this pilgrimage engendered was a lot of support from FSSP, indult type people, and I reminded them of this quote by Lefebvre, and maybe we can try to bring it up on the screen here even too. This is from I think late 1990, early 1990. Yeah, okay. This is what Lefebvre said. This is what causes a problem with certain lay folk who are very nice, very good people, all for the society, who accept the consecrations but have a deep down regret that they are no longer with the people they used to be. They say, quote, "It is a pity we are divided. Why not meet up with them? Let's go have a drink together, reach out our hand. That's a betrayal," he said. That's a betrayal. Okay, they must make up their minds. So I think this is directed at, those fair weather SSPX supporters from those various communities, who say, "Oh yes, we like this." I don't know if Anthony Stein goes there or not, but it seems that a lot of people who are not SSPX really love this pilgrimage, and that it's okay. It's a bludgeon we can use against the modernists. Well, Lefebvre's saying no. Like, you're already shaking hands with the modernists, and so you need to come on our side, make the jump, and let's go. Let's fight this battle. We have no reason to be afraid, he says, of not being with Rome, because Rome is not with tradition. So that's the way I view it: is, hey, Rome's not with tradition. And if you're claiming to be traditional, what are you doing with them? Simple as that.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And I hope, again, as I've said many times now, people will go and they'll go check out your stuff. Chris Jackson's another really good one that I like him. I don't agree with him on everything. I'm sure I don't agree with you on everything either. But and I said that's times people really trying to send an Novus watch, Louis Verrecchio. I mean, there are these few voices that are trying to say it as it is, and hopefully, I'm sure you would agree with me. No matter what, we should all be searching for truth, right? I think that's our responsibility, that we need to actually search for the truth. Now, that doesn't mean we have to all become experts in canon law and read all the documents of Vatican II, but I think we need to have an honest, open heart and honestly search for what is true. And I think if you do, then you'll find it. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I've seen here in Europe, maybe 10 or more young men themselves through traditional Catholicism, many of them from nothing, like came from atheism or Protestantism or whatever. And they came through, first of all, through politics, actually. They came because they're interested in truth and interested in looking at the world. How does the world work? What is going on? And then they just dug deeper and deeper and deeper. What is the actual problem with the world? And I think once they saw, okay, yeah, politics is a problem, but it's not the end, right? There must be more. So that, okay, eventually has to come to religion and God, and they dug and dug and dug and dug, and eventually they found the truth. And I think that's hope. That's the hope I have. If these young men and women and families can go and ask for truth, that's ultimately in the end how we win. And as Common said earlier on, pay attention to your prayer life and try to get to heaven. That's obviously the ultimate.
Yeah.
But also support Stephen Kokx over on Substack.
Sure. Well, one thing to add on that too. I mean, there's a phrase, I think it's something along the lines of, in essential things, unity, and non-essentials, or disputed things, liberty, in all things, charity. And I think, what's happened since the conclave is that you've seen an opportunity here for folks who are sort of getting closer to where reality is, right? And I don't have everything answered. I mean, I don't know where I would stand on certain issues with sedevacantism, right? I know there's debates with totalism, and the issues of are the bishops' consecrations valid? I know what others have said. I've not studied these things myself. And so, I think in the meantime, and again, pray for me. I pray for wisdom and insights on these things too from God to let me know what's the situation really is. Until then, we do our best to help one another get to the promised land, if you will, and to say, all right, I recognize that you're not where I'm at yet, or I was there 10 years ago, because everyone's on this journey. You were raised in this, Kevin. Took me 11 years to kind of finally get comfortable coming on a show like this, right? And so I think that's just the nature of the situation that we're in.
Sure.
That doesn't mean be lovey-dovey ecumenists who are just saying, oh yeah, these differences don't matter, right? We're not trying this Michael Matt thing, unite the clans and just leave everything behind. But I think because I think is a sort of false unity. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to tread new ground and have conversations that need to be had and to get them to a wider audience, because I just think there's something unique about this last 4 months here, and it's opening up new ventures. I think that's, by all indications, so the Holy Spirit wants, and to not cooperate with that, or to not again, forge ahead and break down these old taboos and try to answer these questions, as places like you are doing, as Mario's doing, as WM Review is doing, and others who are coming to these conclusions in the last couple of years are trying to do. I think that's a real important moment and something worth celebrating and continuing. And so I hope people will see that everyone here, I think, is honest in pursuit of that, and that will act in charity towards one another as we continue to make an impact that we hadn't before. So.
Put up as all went on and giving your insight and input, and we hope you'll come back on, and maybe next time there's big news or something, we'd love to have you as always. And I'll be reading, and I'll be maybe having to occasionally mute you because you're putting out too much information in one day. But again, good stuff. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on. Everyone, thank you for the comments. You guys, as always, are fantastic. We really appreciate you all. Stay tuned this week. Hopefully on Thursday, we'll have another podcast with Louis Bergoglio about Lumen Gentium. And I can tell you guys, you're going to want to watch this one. This is really a fantastic series that will help to shed light on, as Stephen said, a very, very important topic. Really, the root of every issue right now in Rome goes back to these documents, which we're going to cover. Yep. Otherwise, everyone, thank you very much. Stephen, thank you. Till next time. God bless.